Hello again. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and today's class is Mesh Network Introduction. So we're going to be talking about what mesh networks are, why they're really cool, and some of the considerations you need to think about when you're deploying these in the real world. Mesh networks are one of those types of technology that are absolutely awesome if you configure it and spec it out properly. And if you don't, it can turn into a bit of a disaster, basically like everything else in the IT world. So when we start talking about mesh networks, this is not a new way of doing networks, but it is a type of networking that hasn't been done a lot up until now because it has been relatively expensive to do. So the old form of networking, basically when we're using routers and switches and all that, is essentially point-to-point networking. So your router connects to another router, and then if anything happens to either of those routers, all the clients that are connected to either side of that will not be able to talk to each other anymore. So this is point-to-point communication. We start talking about mesh networks, we start talking about point-to-multi-point communication, where one networking device is actually communicating with numerous other networking devices, so that if any one networking device fails, there are multiple paths for the client computers to use to communicate with, so hopefully they won't be dropped off the network. So in the first case, when you have point-to-point communication, if one router dies, your communication dies. When you have point-to-multi-point communication, if one router or one basically wireless access point or such dies, then it figures out how to create a path using the other wireless access point or network equipment that is around, and so it does something called self-healing, where basically it just reroutes that traffic so the clients stay up and running. Now this has become more and more popular in the wireless world because it makes deploying wireless networks just insanely easy. Because what happens is each wireless access point in a mesh network is able to both send and receive not just client communication traffic, but also backbone traffic. So in the old days, if you were going to set up numerous wireless access points, you would have to set up the numerous wireless access points, and then all of those wireless access points would have Cat5 or network cable going back to the hardwired LAN connection, right? So you may be wireless, but every single one of those wireless access points has a hard connection back to the network. Well, what you can do now with wireless mesh networks is each one of those wireless access points not only can provide communication for the client computers, your iPhone, your Galaxy S4, your wireless computer, but it can also then route that traffic back to the local area network all wirelessly. So now instead of having to have every single wireless access point have its own dedicated connection back to the network, they can all send the traffic wirelessly back to the network. So let's go over to my little whiteboard, and I can try to explain this a little better for you. So let's bring this up. And so this is my nice little whiteboard, right? So back in the day, if you were having little wireless access points, right, and you would spread these all throughout your building so all of your client computers could connect, all of these would have to have a hardwired connection back to something like a switch or a router or such so that they could connect to the network. So that means, from a cost and maintenance perspective, that means you have to run this cable that is very expensive to run. It means you have to connect this into some kind of a wiring closet and such, which means you're going to have to pay somebody like me to build out that wiring closet and such. So that's a very expensive proposition. So in order for a wireless client to get on the internet or network, they would connect to the wireless access point. That wireless access point sends that data down to the switch. The switch will then send it to the router or such, then it will get to the server, right? So all this here is very expensive and very tedious to maintain. So what we do when we're dealing with mesh networks is what happens is those wireless access points, not only can they communicate with the client computer, they can also communicate with each other, right? So let's put all these little wireless access points out here. And then let's say this wireless access point here is connected to the router that then goes out to the internet. So you will notice none of these wireless access points now have a network cable connected to them. They are able to transmit the communication amongst themselves. So if I have a client computer here and he's trying to get out to, let's say, CNN.com, what happens is they connect to this wireless access point. This wireless access point then routes it to the closest wireless access point it sees, then to the next wireless access point, then the next wireless access point, out to the router, out to CNN.com. CNN.com then sends the information to your router through the wireless access point, wireless access point, wireless access point, up and then back to you. So there's basically, you only have to deal with a hardwired connection right here. Otherwise, these wireless access points are sending all of this information wirelessly. Not only that, but they can all communicate with each other as long as they're in range, right? So this wireless access point can send data here or here or here because all of them are in range. This wireless access point can send data here, 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 here because they're all in range. Why that's important, and let's say we have, you know, our whole little wireless network set up like we had it set up before, right? And so this is our router and that goes out to the cloud. Well, what happens now, so if your client computer here connects to this wireless access point, again, he's trying to get to CNN.com, well, the thing is, what happens if this wireless access point then tries to send the data to this wireless access point, but this wireless access point is dead for some reason? Let's say the power got unplugged, or you know, there's some kind of Wi-Fi interference around it, or I don't know, somebody smacked it with a baseball bat. Now, in the old ways of doing networking, if there's this flow of traffic hits any bad networking device, then you get some kind of failure. You get a 404 error, something like that. Basically, you are not able to communicate with CNN.com. Well, the self-healing properties of the mesh network, what happens is this access point tries to talk to this access point. It doesn't get a response, and so it will then automatically route to a different wireless access point that it sees. So if it doesn't get the response here, it routes down here, and then this one goes to there, goes to there, goes to there, up to CNN.com, and then when the information comes back, it goes this way, right? So this is what the self-healing is. So all of these different wireless access points, as long as they're within range, they can see each other so that they can do this self-healing function. So that is why this is so useful and so valuable. Beyond that, again, it is a lot less expensive to deploy this type of equipment because you don't need any Cat5 cable. You don't need any networking cable. Basically, all you have to do is be able to power these devices. You can plug in this wireless access point, plug it into just a regular wall outlet. It will pick up the signal from all the other pieces of mesh equipment that's within range, and that's all you have to do. So you don't have to pay for the wire to be run, you don't have to pay for the cabling closet, any of that kind of stuff. So that is the great thing with these mesh networks. Now, when you're dealing with these mesh networks, though, there are some things to think about when you're going to be deploying them. You know, whenever you're dealing with any kind of equipment, right? Whenever you're buying any kind of equipment, there's always different quality of equipment that you can buy that can deal with different loads, right? So you can buy a $100 piece of mesh networking equipment that will be able to transmit a certain amount of bandwidth, or you can buy a $5,000 piece of mesh networking equipment that will be able to provide more bandwidth. So one of the things you really have to think about whenever you're going to be designing mesh networks is you really have to think about the design and the load that you're going to be putting on each individual node within the mesh network. So let's go back to our little whiteboard so I can explain this a little more, right? So let's say we're creating a mesh network. So we have, you know, the one wireless access point here, and that connects to our router, which of course connects to the internet. Well, this wireless access point, right, this is going to be getting all the load for the network. So all of this stuff is going to, all the traffic is going to be coming in, and so this is going to have to respond to all that traffic. So for this, we know that we're going to have to buy a bigger, more expensive mesh wireless access point to be able to handle that load. Well, then the question is you go out and you go into the offices, and let's say you go into the building here, and this is the building, and the question is what types of other wireless access points you're going to have to buy. Because, you know, if you're thinking about it and you think, well, I'm going to be putting all these little wireless access points into all of these little offices, right? So let's say there's all these offices on these different floors, and each one of these offices is only going to have like one computer in there. So you don't really need to buy an expensive wireless access point for this. Maybe you buy the $99 version, right? So that's no big deal. That's no problem. They can all communicate with each other. They can all send data back and forth, so on and so forth. But the question is where is the bottleneck in this network going to be? So let's say, you have all these little mesh things, these little mesh wireless access points, and they're sending data around. But the overall bandwidth, how much will they be able to handle? If you get really, really small, inexpensive wireless access points and you start deploying them too much, when all of the computers are putting loads on all these different wireless access points, the overall, that may take more bandwidth than the overall load that these different wireless access points can use. So what you might need to do is you put out a lot of little wireless access points, and then within those little wireless access points, you put larger ones that are able to take more load. So these are then able to take more load from the different wireless access points to be able to send that data back to the main wireless access point. So that's one of the things that you have to think about. So not only when you're deploying these wireless access points in a mesh network do they have to deal with their local clients, but they also have to be able to send all that data back to wherever it's going. So that's one of those things that you really, really have to think about when you're deploying this. So when you're speccing this out, you don't just think for the individual load per access point, but you think what is the individual load per access point, and then how much additional data are the other wireless access points pushing to it before the data can get back. Beyond that, you have to make sure that you don't create points of failure. So let's say you're putting out all these little wireless access points, right? So you're putting out lots and lots of wireless access points, and these guys can communicate with each other really, really great. And then over here is, again, you have your main wireless access point that connects back to the router, that connects back to the internet. So all these guys can communicate really well. Then what happens if, over here, again, you have a lot of these wireless access points, and they can communicate very well. And so the idea is you can communicate from this building to this building to go out the internet. Well, what happens sometimes is people won't think about it, and they'll think, okay, I have lots of redundancy, I have lots of reliability here, I have lots of redundancy and reliability here, and then what they'll do is they'll put like 1 or 2 mesh wireless access points in the middle to send that data back and forth. Well, the problem is now you think you have this very reliable, very redundant mesh, but in reality, you really only have 2 points of failure. If those shut down for some reason, all the wireless access points on this side will fail. It doesn't matter how many wireless access points you have. If the routes back to the internet fail, then you're kind of screwed. So that is one of those things that you have to be thinking about whenever you're deploying this equipment. Not only that, when you're thinking about things like point of failure, one of the issues that I see with a lot of this mesh networking equipment is they do things like they allow you to power it using things like power over Ethernet. So one of the questions you have to ask is, where is the power for all of these mesh devices coming from? So if all the power for all of your little mesh devices are coming from the same circuit, or let's say the same power delivery device, if that fails, that then also means all of your networking equipment fails with it, and so really you have 1 point of failure. This is one of those lessons you learn in the IT world, is to really, really, really think about where the hell your point of failure is. A newbie is going to go out and they're going to say, hey, look, I have redundancy and I have reliability because I've got this mesh network with 6 different nodes and they can all communicate with each other. If somehow all 6 of those nodes end up actually being powered from the same place, you know that really you have no redundancy and reliability, because if the power to that one place fails, everything else fails. So that's going to be one of those things that you really need to think about whenever you're dealing with any of this kind of stuff. Think about the overall load that you're going to be putting on that networking equipment, because again, whenever you're dealing with a mesh network, not only are you dealing with the different clients the access points have to deal with, but each access point actually has to be able to transmit the data from all the other access points, and then think about those points of failure. Again and again, I have seen in the real world where people deploy what looks to be an incredibly redundant, reliable system, but it's all powered from like the same power box, and so if that power box blows a fuse, it all shuts down. So it really, what you think is incredibly reliable only has, one point of failure. That can be really bad. Now, if you're going to go out and you're going to start buying mesh equipment, this is the kind of thing that right now there's a lot of different mesh equipment that's available. Cisco has mesh equipment. The one company that sent me some mesh equipment to play with called Open Mesh has mesh equipment. There's a lot of different mesh stuff out there that does a lot of different things. You go out there, you find a vendor that sells the equipment that you want for the right price, and away you go. One of the things that I will warn you about with some of this mesh equipment, though, is that you need to make sure whatever mesh equipment you buy is able to show you log files or what is going on with the mesh equipment in the network. This can be very important, especially when you start deploying larger and larger mesh networks. So with a mesh network, right, all these individual devices are communicating with all these other individual devices autonomously. Really, you just go out there, you deploy it, you set it up, and you walk away. Well, one of the problems you get into, right, since all this is happening autonomously, is what happens if a single mesh access point starts failing or starts flaking out. If you've deployed, 20 or 30 or even 10 of these wireless access points and you don't have a way to see the status of every single one from a single control panel, that can be a really big problem trying to troubleshoot this equipment, especially when you're thinking about deploying a mesh network. You deploy mesh networks to buildings, not even to houses. Like, even I have a big house. But in a big house, you basically need one wireless access point, really. When you're deploying a mesh network, you are deploying these things to office buildings. The type of office building that will probably have anywhere between 200 to 1,000 people in it. So pretty large, a 3 or 4 story office building. So now imagine if you deploy, 10 or 20 of these little mesh wireless access points throughout a 4-story building. If 1 or 2 of them starts acting flaky and you don't have any way to see the status update on what's going on, that can be a really big problem. One of the things I like with Open Mesh, that CloudTrack software I showed you guys in a video yesterday that I taped, is that you can see the status of all your different access points. If one of them fails, then one fails. You can track that down and you can figure out what's going on. If you don't have any kind of system like that, if one fails, it's just going to be a brutal time trying to troubleshoot that. So that's all there is really to the introduction to mesh networks. Again, as the cost of all this wireless networking equipment comes down and the reliability of the networking equipment goes up, we will start seeing more and more mesh networks. Mesh networks have been around for a long time. A decade at least. I know, like when I was in the Army and I was a radio repair guy, the concept of mesh radio networks has been around forever. Ever and ever, right? As far as networking goes, it's been around for a long time, but it's been relegated generally to Cisco class equipment, and very expensive Cisco class equipment. When I was looking at this, when I was a consultant, I was looking at deploying this kind of stuff for one of my clients, and it was something like $3,000 per node. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't inexpensive. If you're going to be deploying a mesh network, even not that long ago, it was a $30,000 to $50,000 proposition. As with all things right now, we are in the golden years of IT, or the golden age, not golden years, the golden age of IT and this type of technology. And so the price is coming down so much, the reliability is going up. So if you go over and you see a company, let's say like Open Mesh, like I say, these guys sent me some of their networking equipment that I like, and this stuff is just incredibly cheap. If you go over and say you look at their access points now, you can get this stuff, their lowest price thing is $55 all the way up to $225, but they've got a lot of inexpensive stuff in between, $75, $95, $95, $225. So nowadays, again, you can actually deploy a mesh network realistically for less than $1,000. Again, this is not something that you would have been able to do before. Whenever you're looking at this, as I was saying, make sure you spec out what kind of these access points that you're actually going to need. You're going to see like the $55 one here. This has a single internal antenna. So that would be good for like one office. It's not going to have a load for it. This has a single external. This has a dual internal, 6 internal. It says all these different things. So again, this is where whenever you're buying the networking equipment, don't just look at price. Don't say, oh, this one's $55, this one's $225, so I'm going to buy the $55 one. Really what you have to do is you have to look up here, max speed. So this says 150 megabits per second versus 900 megabits per second. So you have to think, 300 megabits per second. What is going to be the overall load for each one of these nodes in the mesh network, and then figure it out from there. Again, a little bit of it. If you have any questions, again, whether you're buying this equipment from Cisco or whoever you're buying it from, and you're not sure, the one thing that I always tell you guys is call the vendor. Again, whether it's Open Mesh, whether it's Cisco, one of these other things, the best thing that I have found in the real world, especially when you're using this kind of technology where it's kind of, things aren't really written in stone the way things are for some other technologies. All you have to do is call up the vendor and say, hey, I have a 4-story office building, this many square feet. What do I need to purchase? And they will tell you, because they want you to be happy and they want you to buy the product, and so away you go. So that was a class introduction to mesh networks. Again, very, very, very interesting, very, very, very cool. And I would argue over the next 5 years is going to become more and more prevalent, mainly because it is so inexpensive to deploy. Again, you don't have to run that networking cable that's really expensive. You don't have to have the wiring closets that, again, are really expensive. You just plug these things in and away you go. It makes life very, very, very easy for all involved, and means that, business owners don't have to hire nearly as many geeks to maintain it. Spiceworks.com. These guys have the free network management software, the free mobile device management software, the free community with millions of users. So if you're an IT professional and you need support, Spiceworks is a great place to go. All of their stuff is basically free and just an absolutely great thing. Again, if you have any questions that I don't answer in the show that are technical in nature, we're talking about Active Directory synchronization between sites in remote areas. If you click on the link below this video, that will take you to the Spiceworks community. They have millions of users there that will be able to help you out. So take a look at Spiceworks.com. Is managing users and computers on Active Directory too cumbersome? Download SolarWinds' terrific trio of free Active Directory admin tools today and start saving time on those Active Directory management tasks. These free tools help you manage and remove computers and users from Active Directory and allow you to add users in bulk. The free tools include Inactive User Account Removal Tool, enables you to scan Active Directory and optionally remove users who have not logged in for a certain amount of time. Inactive Computer Account Removal Tool enables you to scan Active Directory and optionally remove computers that are over a certain number of days old. And User Import Tool saves time by giving you the ability to create users in bulk using a CSV file. You can even specify the attributes. Also be sure to check out SolarWinds' community page, thwack.com, to connect with more than 100,000 IT professionals. So take a look at SolarWinds.com for their free and other tools. SchooleyMitchell.com. If you're trying to find better internet or telephone service, or if you're trying to find less expensive internet or telephone service, give Schooley Mitchell a call. Basically what these guys are telecom consultants. You call them, you say what you need for yourself or your client, and they figure out the best option. They'll examine your existing services and review your bills to make sure there are no errors. Then they'll keep an eye on your services moving forward so that everything remains optimized. Because Schooley Mitchell is objective and independent, they have no ties to vendors. You know they are always your best interests in mind. The best part is there is no fee for their services. The only cost is a portion of the shared savings over a set period of time. If they don't find savings, there is no cost to you. Schooley Mitchell. Plixer.com. Plixer deals with NetFlow analytics software. So NetFlow is a component of Cisco equipment that shows you what's going on at the network layer, what devices are talking to what other devices, what kind of network jitter, all of that kind of stuff. So Plixer has a free piece of software called Scrutinizer. Scrutinizer is a free NetFlow network traffic analysis tool. So if you want to play around with NetFlow, if you want to see what's going on with the network layer and you have Cisco equipment, take a look at Plixer.com. Click on the link below this video. It'll bring you to this page where you can download Scrutinizer, the free NetFlow network traffic analysis tool. AddAccess.com. If you're dealing with Active Directory on a large scale, so you have hundreds of users to add, hundreds of users to disable, so on and so forth, you may want to take a look at adaccess.com. This is Active Directory management and automation software. So this tries to automate and simplify the Active Directory workflow. So if you are in a large-scale Active Directory infrastructure, take a look at adaccess.com. Altero.com, A-L-T-A-R-O.com, if you're dealing with virtualization in a Hyper-V environment. So we're talking about Windows Server 2008 R2, 2012, and 2012 R2. Take a look at Altero.com. They have a number of Hyper-V backup solutions. They have the free version, which will back up to 2 VMs for free forever. They also have the unlimited version, starting at only $400 per host. I think this is a very good value. So if you are dealing with Hyper-V virtualization and you need a backup solution, take a look at Altero.com. NerdsWeCanFixThat.com. If you're thinking about starting your own computer services company, but you don't want to have to worry about coming up with a logo and copyright and trademark and all of those kinds of things, you may think about buying into a computer services franchise system. Nerds We Can Fix That is a computer services franchise system. They have 62 franchises throughout the United States. They can franchise in every state other than Hawaii. They also franchise internationally. If you're thinking about starting your own computer services company, you should contact them, fill out the information below, or give them a call. Again, as I will say, franchise systems are great for a lot of people, not so good for others. Always make sure to do your due diligence, but if you're thinking about starting a computer services company anyway, you might as well contact Nerds We Can Fix That to see what they have to say. Veeam.com, V-E-E-A-M.com. If you just virtualized 100 servers and now you're trying to figure out how to back them up, they have solutions for ESXi, they have solutions for Hyper-V, and as you guys like, they have free stuff. So if you are dealing with a virtualized environment and you're trying to figure out a backup solution, take a look at Veeam.com. So today's hands-on review is the Icy Dock SATA solid-state drive hard drive converter. So basically what this does is it converts your nice little SATA hard drive into a form factor so you can plug this into a server or computer, right? So a lot of times, you know, when we're upgrading our servers or computers, we don't necessarily buy an entirely new server. You know, sometimes you may want to add a solid-state drive as some kind of form of cache mechanism, something like that. You have an older server, maybe with hot swap bays, and you're looking at it and you're like, well, okay, well, I've got this solid state drive and I've got this hot swap bay, but this doesn't really fit in the hot swap bay. What can I do? Well, what this converter does is it actually converts this solid state drive into a form factor so you can then plug this into whatever bay you need. So if you have a 3.5-inch bay, whether it's some kind of hot swappable bay or some other kind of bay in your server, you're able to put this into here and now you have a form factor that you can screw into your server. So let's go over to my little demo table so I can show you what's going on here. So there isn't a lot to this. It's basically just a nice little well-built plastic box. So what we have is this is our little solid state drive, and again, it is too small to put into a bay. So let's say we have like one of our QNAP NAS or SAN devices, right? They don't have bays for small solid state drives in them, or something like a Synology or whatever like that. So if we have this little solid state drive, how are we supposed to plug it in? Well, what we do is we take this little hard drive converter, all we do is we pop this top off, and then we look and we just have these insides here. All we then do is we slot in the solid state drive, we just plug it in like that, then we take the cover, we then take the cover, oops. Take the cover, slide it on, and now our solid state drive has the form factor of a nice 3.5-inch drive. You'll also notice it has all the screw holes on it. So if you want to, not only can you put this into some kind of hot swap bay, but you can actually screw it into the rails or whatever else is going on within your server case. And that's really all there is to it. If you want to pull out your solid state drive, you can just open the door like that, slide it out, put in your other solid state drive, and away you go. Again, why this is useful is if you have older server cases that don't have any kind of like holes or whatever, slots for these small drives, this would be useful for that. If you have some kind of SAN or NAS units where again, they have the 3.5-inch bays, they just simply don't have the 2.5-inch bays, that would be useful. And like I say, it's just one of those nice, simple, easy, useful things. And again, like with all the Icy Dock equipment, I mean, for what it is, it's built very well. It's nice, good plastic. It's nice fittings. It looks solid. It's built well. Everything just slides on and off very easily. So again, with all Icy Dock stuff, I have found it to be good. If we go over to the computer, we can just take a little bit of a look at this. Again, all you have to do is if you go to icydock.com, you look for the Easy Convert MB882SB SP-1S-2B, and you can see this. And again, I mean, there's not really a whole lot to it. One of the other things I like, especially with Icy Dock, is all their stuff is reasonably well priced. So right now, if you go over to newegg.com, you can pick this up for $15, which again, I would say is a good deal. Like I say, build quality for what it is. I think that's pretty good. So just click this. So there we go. So this is the Icy Dock 2.5-inch SSD drive converter. Definitely give it a thumbs up. Definitely see a use for it in the real world. And again, like I say, Icy Dock has sent me a lot of equipment over the past couple of months. And I will say, genuinely, everything that they have sent me is just really well built. You know, this isn't like some tier 3 manufacturer. This is really like tier 1, very good quality stuff that fixes very specific problems we have in the IT world. So this question comes from Chibi J. I recently was promoted to the IT department at my job as an operations administrator. I would like to obtain my Microsoft 6780, but I don't want to pay $1,000 to take the course. Do you know of any good prep testing sites or books, videos to study from? Some days you guys just frustrate the hell out of me because, you know, I sat there and I was like, that's a good question. So I started typing in Microsoft 6780 and had the darndest time because I couldn't figure out what the hell this guy was talking about. It is not the Microsoft test 60-780. It is, 70-680 would be the test. So one of the things, remember, whenever you're asking anybody any questions, especially me, just make sure you do a bit of proofreading and make sure your numbers are correct, or I'm going to lose the little bit of hair I have. So basically what this is the basic test for the MCSE for Windows 7 administration. Now the one thing that I will tell you guys, is if you're going to take Microsoft tests, right, not all tests are created equal in the minds of the employer. If you're going to take the time to learn the material, study the material, and take the test, I would highly argue you go for the server operating systems. If you pass a client system operating system test, Windows 7 or I guess Windows 8 would be the current ones, that's nice and all, we really, that's good. That's good, but it's not really something that's going to put you above the pack. Whereas if you come in and at least you have your MCSA with the server operating systems, that makes you seem a little bit more impressive. Again, any Tom, Dick, and Harry now knows how to deal with client operating systems, and you train somebody in about a week and they can understand Event Viewer and how to do that kind of stuff. The server operating systems are the ones that are more significant and will look more impressive. So again, one of the things you have to realize whenever you're taking these kind of Microsoft tests is half of the time and energy you're going to take is learning the material. And then half the time and energy you're going to take is actually studying for the test. So a lot of people think, well, I already know the client operating system, so I'll just take like the Windows 7 test first because that will be so much easier. And you don't realize how much goes into simply learning how to pass the test. So really, it's only overall going to be a little bit more work to learn Windows Server 2012, and I would argue it will be much better for you all the way around. Now, this person doesn't want to pay $1,000 for the course, and so you have a few options here, right? You could go through something like CBT Nuggets. Those are the guys that I used to work for a while. They have a lot of these certification programs, so you pay like $99 a month, and they have like a training it's like a online video training program, like a whiteboard type thing. So you can take something like that, or you can buy some books. I'm going to show you in a minute. If you're looking for free, there's nothing that I would trust out there if you're looking for free. I know a lot of you guys, you know, you want free stuff. And the reality is, if you want to learn how to program, if you want to learn how to do Python or Ruby or JavaScript or any of that kind of stuff, there's a lot of free, good free material out there for programming. When it comes to IT stuff, you got to pay for it. Whether you pay $100 for it or $5,000 for it, that's a question. Whether or not you pay for it at all, you will have to pay for it. Now, if we go over to our computer, basically, I just brought up Amazon.com, and honestly, the two books I would have you look at if you're going to be studying for the Microsoft tests is the self-paced training kits from Microsoft is actually very good. So Microsoft has been putting out these training books since way back in Windows NT days, and they do a very good job of creating training books. So this one here comes in at $42.52. One thing that I will say is whenever you're going to be buying any of these kind of books, do make sure you look at the publishing date. Make sure it is the latest book in the series. So you get a problem with that a lot, especially with the CompTIA stuff. You'll pick up like the test prep book for A+, and it's actually 2 tests old. So I'm not sure with this particular one, but basically what you're going to look for is Microsoft's self-paced training kit for whatever exam you're looking for and whatever the latest one is. And then I like ExamCram. Now, again, this may just be I'm an old guy and this is what I used, and so this is what I will continue to like to use, but I genuinely have always liked ExamCram. I think they're just very good test prep books. So what you do is you get the Configuring Windows 7 training kit from Microsoft. This will teach you the material, and then ExamCram is very good for teaching you to study for the test. They'll do all the little tricks and all that kind of stuff. And so those are the two books I would have you look at and purchase, and then have your own little computer lab at home so that you can play with that stuff. I mean, that is what I would say. The one thing I will say, I looked over for the exam, 70-680. This is the Windows testing site. And what I did notice here, and this is just something for you guys, you'll have to figure out if you're going to be taking the test, is it currently says to schedule your exam, choose one of the following third-party exam providers. Note, Prometric will cease delivering Microsoft certifications exams after December 31st, 2014. If you intend to take an exam on January 1st, 2015 or later, you must reschedule your exam with Pearson VUE. Again, this is the kind of stupid little thing you just have to keep in mind whenever you're going to be doing certifications and tests to make sure you know what you're doing. But otherwise, that is what I would say. I would say get the test prep and the ExamCram, and then again, think twice about really do you want to take all this time for client operating systems. I am telling you, at the end of the day, it's not going to be that much more work and effort to learn servers, and I am telling you, at the end of the day, employers are going to be a crap ton more impressed if you know servers, and also if you're actually going to go anywhere in this field, you need to know servers. So if you're going to have to learn servers anyway, why not take a little bit more time to get certified in servers now versus taking all the time and energy and money to get the certifications in a client operating system? You get what I'm saying? Because again, with the test, if we go over here and we take a look at the test, do realize, I mean, none of this is free. So even if you just buy these books, that's $100 at least unto itself, and then the test is $150. In order to get your MCSA, you need 2 tests. So it's going to be $300 in testing fees alone, plus books, plus time and energy. I mean, really, why are you going to bother with a client operating system when for a little bit more effort and energy you can know the server operating system, and it will just do you a lot better in the long run? So this question comes from Christoph F. Would it be an option to use a shared folder on Dropbox, Amazon S3, or something like that as an alternative to your FTP server? Are there any advantages why you prefer FTP for your videos? I know you have to pay for each gig someone downloads from an Amazon S3 drive. So this question goes through the FTP server that I have up now so that you can download my videos. So basically with this whole issue with the micro stop stopped, I have realized that YouTube at any point may kill my channel. And so what I did was I built a 3 terabyte FTP server. It's a dedicated server that sits up in the cloud that you guys can download videos from. So if you go to EliTheComputerGuy.com, you look in the upper left-hand corner, there's a link that says download videos, and you can click on that, and that will actually take you to an FTP download site so you can download any videos you want. And I keep it relatively up to date. It's about 10 videos behind, but basically I'm trying to put my entire catalog up there. It just takes a while to get done. So this is one of the questions that's come up is like, Eli, why are you using FTP? I don't... It's kind of, yeah, because it's a good it's a good way to transfer files. So a lot of questions have come up with this about why I use FTP. So let's go through some of the other options for a server and why I don't do that. The first one that always comes up is, Eli, why don't you use BitTorrent? Use BitTorrent, Eli. Well, the issue is a lot of the people that watch my videos aren't exactly the highest level in technology, don't really know a lot about what's going on, and so if I only provided my video files using BitTorrent, they would have to install that client onto their computer. It would be an extra step. It would be an extra pain in the butt. Not only that, but that dedicated FTP server that I put up on the web, it has a 500 megabit per second connection dedicated to the internet that actually bursts up to a gig per second. So if I was running this server out of my house that only has a 35 megabit upload speed, then I would be worried about saturating my bandwidth, and I might do something like a BitTorrent client in order to break that bandwidth over multiple servers or multiple computers versus simply all coming out of mine. Since I have one dedicated server with 500 megs dedicated burstable up to a gig, I'm not worried about speed at all, right? So I don't have to worry about speed, and if I did something like BitTorrent, that would add an additional step and complication to the process, so therefore there's no reason to do BitTorrent. Beyond that, when you ask about things like DropBox or Amazon S3, that kind of thing, what you have to realize with a lot of services such as DropBox and things like Google Drive is that they do in fact have terms of service. They're the types of terms of service that they don't seem to actually police a lot of the time, but I don't want to be the one poor bastard where they crack you on the knuckles for it. So a lot of those types of services that allow you to put files up within their system and then be able to share those files out, they don't want, and it specifically says within the terms of service, that you basically can't share those files out completely publicly. The idea is you can share files with your friends or your cohort or your employees or whatever like that, but they don't want to do what I'm doing, where basically I put my entire catalog up there and any Tom, Dick, or Harry can download it. It just violates the terms of service. Then you start looking over at something like Amazon S3, and one of the issues with that is you have to look at what you are paying for. So a lot of times when people look at using services like Amazon S3, all they look at is the fee for storing that data online. So what you have to understand with Amazon is there are multiple different fees. One fee is the upload, the inbound bandwidth to them. So when you're uploading all your stuff onto their servers, how much do you charge, or how much do they charge you? Normally nowadays that is free, but they do have the right to at some point charge for the amount that goes up. Beyond that, then once your files are on their servers, they then charge you for the amount of storage that you in fact use. That can actually get pricey after a while. And then on top of that, they then do charge for the outbound traffic. So every gig that goes out, they charge for. Now realize these new videos that I'm doing, 1080p for an hour long, come out to about 3 gigs in length. So if like 1,000 of you guys decided to download 100 of my videos, that could get expensive foolishly quickly. And I don't really know, it would be very difficult to budget for. What I like is the dedicated server I have now has 3 terabytes of storage. It has a 500 megabit per second connection to the internet, burstable up to a gig. It has a quad-core Xeon processor. So again, one of the things you don't think about, like with file storage, is the processor and the RAM actually matter for the performance of the server. So it's got a quad-core dedicated Xeon processor. It's got 8 gigs of RAM. It's got all of that kind of stuff. And the thing is, I pay about $100 a month for that dedicated server. So you guys could hit that. Please don't. theoretically speaking, you guys could hit that thing all day long, and it's not going to cost me a dime at the end of the day, and it will be able to handle that load. So if you guys pull out 50 terabytes of files over a month, it doesn't cost me a dime more than if you pull out 20 gigs, right? So especially as more and more people use the service, there you go. And additionally, one thing I like using that dedicated server is I don't have to worry about upgrades or messing around with anything else in the future. Again, I have that one server. That server will cost me the same from now to the end of time, or till whenever I cancel the contract. I don't have to worry about migrations. I don't have to worry about terms of service. I don't have to worry about throttling. I don't have to worry about this. I don't have to worry about the other thing. It just works. And again, you know, FTP is really, really, really simple, and that's where we're going to go. I am probably actually going to change it to an HTTP server for download. Right now, I'm in the process of migrating all the or compressing all the files into zip format. That actually doesn't do a lot for the size, but it will allow me to set up a little bit different system. Basically, same thing, a little bit different. But yeah, but that's why for the amount of stuff I have to push out. That's why I went with FTP. Again, that's one thing that you have to think about. With whatever solution or whatever service you're offering to your users or to your clients, is you have to think about things like size. If I simply had MP3, if I simply had audio files and each audio file was like a meg in size, then something like Amazon S3 may be a perfect solution. Again, when each one of my files is up to 3.2 gigs in size, you need something entirely different. So those are all the kinds of things you have to think about whenever you're looking to create your solution. What are the actual costs you're going to have to pay? What are the terms of service? Again, just because you can get away with something doesn't mean that the service that you're using isn't going to be alerted to what you're doing and then shut you down later, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So that's why we're going with FTP and soon probably HTTP. Because, I mean, it works. I don't know why. It was like, FTP is old. It works. So for the final thoughts for today, I want to talk about ulterior motives. And this is an important thing to understand in the real world, right? If we were living in a utopian world of fairy dust and cotton candy, then everybody would be honest and they would be transparent, and you could ask anybody why they did anything and they would tell you, and they would honestly tell you why it is they do those things. But here in the real world, that is not how things work. People do things for one reason and then will tell you that they're doing whatever those things are for an entirely different reason. So I was talking a couple days ago about, like I say, the Baltimore City school system and how they implemented, you know, these computer science programs in the high schools. But the problem is that the pass rate on the program is absolutely abysmal. The one I was talking to somebody about literally had a pass rate of 0%. So it's important to understand whenever you're dealing with anybody what the ulterior motivations are, right? So if you go into a high school and you see that they have a computer science program, what you would think in your mind is that they have a computer science program or something like that. Then their motivation is to get you educated or get the student educated, to get the student the skills that are required to get a better job, right? That seems fair. If you go into a high school and they have these advanced programs, you go, wow, the motivations here are, you know, in order to teach these kids. That many times is not the actual reality. What you see is not actually what the people are trying to do. So if you go into a lot of these schools, you deal with a lot of nonprofit organizations, these types of things, what you find out is that people, government agencies, foundations and such, give a lot of money to organizations and educational institutions that are trying to empower minority and lower class people, right? And it sounds like a good thing, you know, go into the city, we're going to create a computer science program and we are going to teach these kids how to be computer scientists. So by coming up with a program like that, a lot of these foundations and all these institutions are willing to give a lot of money to these educational institutions and organizations that are doing that type of thing, right? So now what you have to realize is that a lot of these organizations, these educational institutions, they're not so much providing these types of training programs for you or for the students or to make the students' lives better as much as to bring money in. So the ulterior motivation for a lot of these things is what you think you are seeing is not what is actually happening. They are not providing these programs to actually educate kids. They're providing these programs to bring in money in order to pay the teachers, in order to pay the principal, in order to build a new school, in order to do all of these other things. And that's why when you actually interact with these programs, when you actually go through the programs, that is why the failure rate for many of these things are so high, or even the people that get through them, at the end, they don't know what to do with it, and they can't actually put it into use in the real world. You know, this also came up with one of the questions that I answered the other day, and somebody sent me this email, and basically, I mean, it really sounded like they were begging, right? It was one of these emails right after I talked about launching the Patreon campaign in order so I could give money to organizations and things that actually are doing something useful. And it was this email that I got from somebody that said, you know, oh, you have given me you have shown me that I should be inspired to be given money from people and blah blah blah. Basically, it sounded, and it truly did sound like they were trying to beg money, and that just, irritated me to all high hell and back. And one of the things that you have to understand is, like, when you're dealing with people, again, what are their motivations, and are their motivations in line with what you think their motivations are? So this person, once I did that response to their email, I got another email from them, and they said all kinds of nastiness to me. This happens a lot. People send me a question or something, I do not respond in the way they think I should, and then they get even nastier to me because I wasn't polite, or I wasn't nice, and I don't have reading comprehension skills and all that other crap, right? And the reason is because they think my motivation with you guys is that we should be friends, that I should care about you, that I should treat you nice, that I want to be part of this community, right? Because they think my motivations are like Chris Pirillo or Barnarcules Nerdgasm or any of these other folks on YouTube that really care about fostering each other's whatever fairy dust and cotton candy, when in reality, my motivation, I don't give a horse crap about any of that kind of stuff, right? All I care about are you getting the skills to get paid? I don't care if you like me. I don't care if you have warm and fuzzy feelings about me. I don't care if you want to buy me a beer or a cup of coffee. I don't care about any of that. If you come out of my videos and you are so pissed off to high hell you can barely see straight, but you take the information and actually go out to do things that will get you paid more money and push your career ahead, that is all I care about. Because you have to understand what my motivations are in life, right? My motivation currently in life is to go and to start dealing with a higher level of people, I guess you could say. A lot of the bigger decision makers in the world. Again, one of the things that I tell you guys is, the things that are important for me is learning kind of like those golden nuggets of knowledge. So that's one of the reasons I've talked with warehouse workers and secretaries and CEOs and multimillionaires and all that, because I'm like, kind of like a real life philosopher. I just like to go out and poke my nose into things and figure out what's going on, right? So for me, right now, in order to get to the next level of being able to poke my nose into what's going on, basically I have to prove that in fact I am doing something right now, that I am making the world better right now, and therefore I should be allowed in the room. Because the class of people that I want to deal with, that I want to get in the room with, they don't care about what you've done. They don't care about what you will do. They care about what you are doing right now. And the more you're doing right now, and the more significant what you're doing right now is, the wider the door is, and the bigger the seat you get to sit at the table. So all I care about is helping you guys build bigger businesses, get work done, not look like complete asshats when you go out there into the real world, and that kind of thing. And so that's why when this person emailed me, and it really, honestly, hand a spaghetti monster, that email just sounded like a whole bunch of nasty, slovenly begging to me. That's why I went off so much on it, because I want you guys to understand, if you go out in the world begging, people will ignore you at the best, and they will write you off at the worst. Nobody deals with beggars. When you talk about give me, you look like a child. If you are an adult and you talk about what you are given, you look like a worthless, pathetic child, and you won't be dealt with, right? I may be mean, I may be vicious when I talk to you guys on this camera, but I am simply telling you what's going through people's heads. Other people, significant people that you're going to be dealing with, they will never say those things to you. They will just nod, they will smile, they will walk away, and they will simply never deal with you again, right? So that's one of the things you have to think about with motivations. Whenever you're dealing with anybody and you're going to be interacting with them, think about what their motivations are. Are there motivations to make you feel better? Are there motivations to get you ahead? Are there motivations something that literally almost have nothing to do with you? You are just simply a cog in their system. These are the important things to understand, and the more you understand the motivations of the people that you're dealing with, the easier and more successful your life will be. Again, as I've told everybody here, if you understand my one and only motivation for doing these videos is to get you ahead. Truly, I want you to make more money and be more successful and do better things. Not because I care whether or not you get hit by a bus tomorrow, but because the more of you that are the more successful making more money, I can take that and I can show that kind of like a resume or a CV to the people that, open or close the doors to the places that I want to get to, and there we go. So yeah, that's one of the things to think about whenever you're dealing with anybody. Think about their motivations, and the more closely in line you can interact with their motivations, the easier it will go. If you walk into something and you don't realize that, again, it's just a bad thing sometimes. So you guys have been asking whatever happened to Geekbraindumpcom, and I am proud to say that Geekbraindumpcom still exists and is still trucking along. So this was one of my side projects where I started it up. We got a huge amount of activity. It was just exploding. It was just insane. There was just so much traffic, and then all of a sudden, all the traffic went away, and I was trying to figure out what to do about Geekbraindumpcom next, and I am proud to say you guys have kept trucking along. So basically with Geekbraindumpcom, any of you guys who want to be authors to write technology posts can log in and register and actually be able to publish your posts here, and you guys have continued to do that. So back in September, I was kind of scratching my head trying to figure out what should happen next, and you guys have just continued to write posts, and so I am going to keep Geekbraindump.com going as long as you guys keep writing. So if you go over here and you look for the Write For Us link, you can see how to actually get your own account. And if we go over here, you can see all of our authors and all of the people that have written posts so far. We have, Martin Lehner up here with 137 posts and Gary West with 42, and so on and so forth. So a lot of people ask, why should I write for Geekbraindump.com? And honestly, the question, the answer that I've always given is basically this is simply just something that you can put on your resume. If you're a high school student or a college student, you don't have an internship, you don't have a job, you don't have anything to put on the resume, what I've said is you can come here, you can write for Geekbraindump.com, and then when you go to actually be employed by somebody or you go for an interview, they can say, what have you done? And you can say, I have written 42 posts for Geekbraindump.com, and they can go, oh wow, look, you are actually doing something. Because again, what I wanted to remind you guys is that employers want to hire people that are doing things, not that want to do things, not that hope to do things, not that really wish that they could do something, but that actually, in fact, are doing something. And so that is the point. So you guys can come, you can write about whatever it is you want in technology. It can be published here, and then you can put it on your resume and go, look, I have written so many posts for Geekbraindump.com. This is why you should hire me. And if you read my post, you will realize how smart I am. So I am happy that this is continuing to go, and I've said, yeah, it'll just keep trucking along. So if you're interested, come to geekbraindump.com.